From trichomes.com, I'm Jason Itamura, and this is Tech and Cannabis. I talk with game changers in the tech community to gain valuable insights into the future of the fast-paced cannabis industry. Today, we are joined by Kyle Sherman, CEO and founder of Flowhub. Today, we talk about how he turned his mission to make safe cannabis products accessible to every adult on the planet Earth into one of the fastest growing cannabis dispensary software companies. We also talk about how he convinced the government to give software developers access to their cannabis tracking servers, why it's now better to work from home, and the future of cannabis apps in the Apple App Store. All right, and today we have CEO and founder of Flowhub, Kyle Sherman, with us today. Thanks for coming on, Kyle.
Hey, thanks for having me, Jason. Really excited to be on your show today.
Awesome. I guess for those out there who don't know Flowhub is a software. I guess it's not only a software for dispensaries, but it kind of goes through the entire process from seed to sale. Is that correct?
Actually, we focus primarily today on the dispensary side. So early on, you're right. When we first started Flowhub, we really thought, we had this thesis that we should go build for the entire supply chain, but we've since focused over the last few years primarily on retail. That is where our energy goes today.
Gotcha. I just, one of the things about your company is your guys' is kind of a slogan or mission statement. I love it. To make safe cannabis products available to every adult on planet Earth, right? How did that all become a thing? How did that become kind of your mission?
Yeah, this goes back to a personal story I have, and I've told this many times. Going back to my early 20s, I was prescribed antidepressants and anti-anxiety medications, these pharmaceuticals. And, it was a really interesting process, right? To go through getting prescribed these really strong drugs, which I now know are strong drugs, right? And I really found that prescriptions are subscriptions, right? It's a great recurring revenue business for these pharmaceutical companies. Let's go get as many people, as we can onto these drugs they have to use long-term, right? You take them every day, it changes your brain chemistry. And then over time, it's really hard to get off this stuff, right? And so I was put on these medications, some anti-anxiety and antidepressants, and it was a really bizarre process because about a year and a half in, I felt like a different person. And I'm like, what am I doing? I never needed these really. I realized they help some people, but for me, it was clear that I was prescribed these without digging deep enough into, into like, I saw a doctor for 10 minutes, right? I mean, this is crazy. I ended up all these things.
Right.
So I went back to the doctor, said, look, I want to get off this. And he said, no, you can't get off of it. You're not getting off this. I said, what the hell? Like, this is crazy. What do you mean? Well, I have to prescribe you something else to get off these current ones. I said, no, I want to get off everything. But it doesn't really work that way. Right. And I thought this is crazy. So I went online and sure enough, I saw all these other people having the same questions. How do I get off these pills? And, so I started to take it into my own hands. I thought, well, maybe I'll just try to do this myself. I'll titrate down, take a little bit less every day. And it was a painful process, Jason. I mean, it was brutal. Wow. I had pain down my spine. It felt like electricity flowing, like these zaps flowing from my brain down my back. And it was crazy. I was really taking a very small amount away, every 2 weeks or whatever. And I'm like, this stuff's strong. Holy cow. Could you imagine being in some disaster, not having access to these meds while your body's used to taking them? This is terrible. And it turns out you can die if you don't take these meds. You can have seizures and actually die. And so I was thinking, this is crazy. And around the same time, I saw a show on CNN. It was Weed by Sanjay Gupta. Do you remember this special that played forever ago? Charlotte Figge and the story of Charlotte's Web. And
right. Yeah.
I saw this and I thought, boy, I really should try cannabis. Like maybe, I've kind of used cannabis on and off, for some time, but boy, maybe I should try cannabis for this. So I went out and I found a strain called Harlequin. I was living in LA at the time, got my doctor's recommendation, went into a dispensary, found Harlequin, which is high in CBD, sort of low in THC, but enough that you could really, you could feel it, you feel the medicine working. And so I bought a PAX, the original PAX flower vaporizer, and I took this 3 times a day. I was very regimented about it. And it worked really well. Like I could titrate down. I would minimize the side effects, the crazy pain in my spine and these brain zaps and all this. And I fell in love with cannabis. I thought, this is amazing. How come my whole life I was lied to about this thing? It's a medicine. Look at this. There's proof. I have my own personal experience now. And I thought, we need to make this accessible to everybody. This is crazy. like the fact that, I have family that lives in Ohio. This is at the time. Now, Ohio obviously has medical, but at the time, California really was the only state that had this like really robust medical program, if you will. Colorado, had a decent one, but man, California, was near like 20 years. And so I thought we need to make safe cannabis products accessible to every adult on planet Earth. We have to figure out a way to do this. And then I started diving into the war on drugs, and I went, holy cow, this is not just cannabis. I mean, the war on drugs is a disaster. We've spent $1 trillion since Nixon, and we've completely destroyed communities of color and minority communities who've been disproportionately affected by the war on drugs. I thought this is so important. We have to figure out how to end the war on drugs. We have to figure out how to make safe cannabis products accessible to everybody. And so I moved to Denver from LA to go figure out what adult use looked like, right? If you recall, like in 2014, the first stores opened in Colorado. And so we moved out there, my wife and I, we were very pregnant at the time with our first daughter, whose due date was April 20th. We thought that was the craziest sign from the universe that we were on the right track. And so we moved to Colorado, and ultimately I ended up working in compliance for a vertical supply chain. So we had to grow manufacturing facility, a MIPS and a dispensary. And it was there that I really came to the conclusion that if we could build a great platform that could help retailers succeed in building their businesses, stay compliant, that we could actually help make safe cannabis products accessible to every adult on planet Earth. We could go enable these SMBs to go deliver the products to the end consumer and ultimately make it more, accessible. So that's really the origin story of Flowhub and how we came to this conclusion. This mission was the right one for the business. And really at the end of the day, we believe by providing really great software tools to retailers, helping them run a great business, helping them provide exceptional guest experiences, helping them stay compliant, that we can create a world where safe cannabis products are accessible to every adult on planet Earth.
That's awesome. I saw that you guys have, apps that help the retailer themselves with like inventory. You have apps that help, the consumer on their purchasing side. But I know one of the biggest headaches in the business is the compliance side, especially when you cross borders. Big part of it is metric, and I know I think you personally had a hand in changing that for the industry with you lobbying for the API to happen on metric. Tell me a little bit about how that went all about.
Yeah, it's funny. In 2014, we had to report data to the state through metric. It's called MITS at my MITS at the time. I think it was called MITS. And so we'd have to go on to this website and we'd have to manually report, plant waste. We'd have to report sales, but there was no way to do this automatically. I mean, so like literally you'd have to have teams of people reporting data to the state. You'd have to have multiple people doing this all the time, tracking by hand on a clipboard, okay, just tag 1, 2, 3, 4. We moved it from this room to that room. Okay. There's waste here. Okay. We sold this much to this consumer. So it was a really huge pain in the ass back then because no one could handle this. And I started to think, how is anyone going to scale their business? This is absurd. So I went and I met with the Department of Revenue in Colorado and I just encouraged them. I said, you should open up an API to this system. And that was a really beginning of the conversation of what that could look like. I remember bringing in this alpha version of what we call the Nug now, which was this handheld device. And I kind of put together this prototype of it back in the day. And it was a separate Bluetooth scanner. And I had it on my phone and you could scan in the tags. And I was showing the Department of Revenue this. And I said, look what can happen. I mean, talk about cleaner data, right? Right now we're writing stuff down on a clipboard. Right. But if I could scan these tags and I could report to you automatically this information, you're going to get better data. We're going to have a hell of a time, a much easier time delivering the data to you. Great. Like it's a win-win. And so it took until 2016 to get access to this API. But, I'm really proud of the work that we did with some of our dispensary customers early on to just encourage them, put the pressure on them to open up this API. And, Jeff Wells at Franwell, who runs Metric and the parent company of Metric, was very open about wanting to do this. And it was I don't think it was just us, right? Ultimately it was many parties, but we definitely were very early and certainly had a I think we were the first metric integrator ultimately out of all this because we had started so early. Yeah, and now, of course, right, you see California and Michigan and some of these states even having the law that you have to have an open API. So that was a real win. Right. I think I learned early on that, as a citizen, as just a guy who lives in the United States, right? Like you can go in and actually talk to government officials and give them ideas and get things across the line. That was certainly a really interesting learning experience for me, right? Like we can make change happen. We really can. Yeah. It works.
It's impressive. Everybody talks about it. Nobody does it. That's the thing. So that's awesome that you actually got them to pull the trigger on it, because it's a huge change for the industry just to be able to have access to that API.
Yeah, those early days were rough, Jason. I mean, I remember we would be, I think we had 7 or 8 folks at one point and just entering data in, and it was really hard to be on time. You have to do it within a 24-hour period, right? I mean, you have a really minimal window in the grand scheme of things to get hundreds of data points into the system. So yeah, I mean, that was certainly a game changer for us in the early days. That was probably, it was 2014 and 2015 were hard years for retailers and growers in the space when it came to compliance, because there was no tools back then, really.
Yeah. Well, now with, all the legality and the talks of, federal and everything, everybody's kind of jumping on the bandwagon of trying to be, a software player in the space. So, there's a lot of, you're already established out there. You got, your software is very matured and has a lot of usage on it. But there's a lot of people popping up here and there. I guess, what would you say is kind of the differentiator between like Flowhub and then kind of the other competitor, dispensary POS and management software?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're, one has nothing to do with the software itself. It has to do with our customer service. I think, we certainly have a strong reputation for having incredible product support. And, that was really important early on to us. We wanted to create an environment where customers could get a hold of us all the time. And so from the very earliest days, we had 7-day a week, 12-hour a day phone support. And it was really hard for us to do this, but we felt like it was our duty. And it created a really great loop where we could get feedback from customers. We created great relationships with the customers, and we wanted to be, as close to them as possible. And having strong product support certainly made us very different. And I think today still, we're known for that. I mean, we have an 800 number. You can call our 800 number and press 1 and get a hold of a product support person, usually within the first 5 minutes or so. And if for whatever reason we're backed up, you can leave your phone number and our team will actually give you a call back when it's your turn in line. And so, we've been really carefully building that part of our business for a long time. Like we want to make sure that, I think that's what we're probably most known for, is that we really pick up the phone. Like if you need help, we'll help you. And sometimes it's not just a Flowhub question. It's a metric question, and it's blended with a Flowhub question. And our team is really knowledgeable on how to handle metric. A lot of them come from the industry, right? And so they've had hands-on experience themselves, and they can help lend a hand to new retailers who are trying to figure it out. It's really complicated stuff sometimes. I think on the other hand, we've been really mobily driven from the very early days. You heard me talk about even the prototype back in 2014 that I personally built, scanning metric tags into the system. And, I think between our Greet app that scans driver's licenses and medical documents and creates a patient profile very, very quickly, or, it could be our Stash app that, allows retailers to go audit their inventory in the back rooms, or our View app, which is built primarily for owners and managers who want to just have analytics. And it's an app you can download in Google Play Store or the Apple App Store. You can just view your store, like view what's going on, how many people are in the store right now, your average wait times, your top selling bud tenders and products and vendors, right? So your sales numbers, right? It's just quick glances into like what's going on. But, we're really mobile first business. And so I think that also is really unique, right? We've built the technology stack to be flexible for mobile. So I think that's also really a differentiator for us.
Yeah, absolutely. How far out do you guys go? Like, how many states are you guys servicing right now?
I want to say we're in 14 markets today.
Okay. I guess what's the biggest headache from having multiple markets? Because I know there's some of them that just try to focus on certain states and not multiple because they're so vastly different on some of the rules? I mean, I guess kind of walk me through some of the pain points and how you guys have overcome some of these things.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we've overcome all the pain points yet of being
Right.
trying to scale into multiple markets in this space. Yeah, every state is like its own country, right? I mean,
Right.
there's these really particular rules. I think it's funny looking back early on. I really bet that Colorado would be replicated pretty verbatim across markets, and that turned out to be like half true, right? I mean, other states got metric and had similarities, but it seems just every year these markets drift further and further apart and become unique in the way they do things. It makes it complicated. I'll tell you, Jason, it's not easy, right? Like trying to scale into multiple markets and have a system that's flexible for all of them is really a difficult problem to solve. I think we've done a really good job. It's just really difficult, right? Like I think this is why you see players, I think sometimes you see players kind of get stuck in a region and they never can break out of that region because their software is so particularly built for that region. And so I was really proud early on that we broke out of Colorado and Oregon and into California and Alaska and Michigan. And we, I think we were one of the few players that did figure out, kind of how to do that at scale. But I'll tell you, it's still every day is a learning experience on how to do this well, because every state has something new and all the time it seems, and we've got to react to it. And, it can certainly be frustrating, but I think, look, it's just a part of how cannabis is evolving in the US, right? It's similar to alcohol, right? If you go to a state like Pennsylvania, they're government-owned stores. If you go next door to New Jersey, they're not. So, right, you have different, similar to alcohol, you just have this state bifurcation. And what I'm really curious about is, what does interstate commerce ultimately look like? Like, what does it actually look like in practice? Because you have this very kind of, bifurcated framework. So I definitely have theories there, but it's just going to be interesting. So I don't know if that answers your question, Jason, but it's not easy.
Yeah, it's not easy. No, I hear you there. I mean, I guess going back to your company being very mobile centric and having a mobile capability. Just recently, Apple announced they're kind of loosening the reins a little bit on cannabis. So I mean, how do you think that's going to affect the industry?
Yeah, it's great. I mean, you saw Ease launch their native iOS app that allows you to order an app now. This has been a bet of mine forever that we'd get here. I think you'll see more apps in the App Store, right? I mean, like, you're going to see a better customer experience. I mean, way to go, Apple. I mean, can we just recognize Apple as a company for a second? Right. It's probably a little late to the game, in the grand scheme of things, but here you have a $2 trillion business, influential, right? Saying, hey, look, you're in a legal market. They're recognizing the industry for what it is, right? It's a legal business in these states. It's just further supports the decline of the federal grip on the war on drugs, which is phenomenal. The drugs are winning. So, look, I think this is just a great signal, not just for cannabis, but for the general war on drugs, that, like, look, there's a pathway out of this. And it really, private companies have to step up and have to support our industry, because, you have to respect what's been built here. I mean, there's a $20+ billion industry today that's going to grow to be bigger than alcohol over the next, maybe 15 years or so. This is going to be a $300-400 billion industry domestically. Like, we shouldn't screw around. I mean, so it's great to see Apple step up like this.
Yeah, it was. It wasn't surprising, but it was at the same time. It's like it's something that should have happened, but we're pretty happy that they're making strides.
By the way, if I Jason, did I say 300 or 400 trillion? Because I meant billion. I got to correct the record on that. I'm not that crazy. I may be a little crazy.
Right. Yeah, billion. I think we got that.
Good.
So another thing I wanted to talk to you about. Because obviously the pandemic has hurt a lot of businesses, and it's kind of affected cannabis in a lot of different ways. But interestingly, I see that you're a pretty big advocate on remote work. I think your entire company is kind of converting to remote, and I just want to kind of get your feedback on it, because I know ever since the pandemic, everybody's kind of up in the air on, like, how do we handle this? Should we go back? Should we not? Should we just, if it works, it works, stay at home? What's your take on that, especially for a tech company?
Yeah, I think if you want to be competitive in terms of finding great people, you're going to have to be remote. It doesn't mean you can't get together, right? I think there's like this interesting, it's just this really interesting debate right now where it's like, do we have to work together every day? Is it like twice a week? And my thought is, look, we can get together maybe like every 6 months, the entire company gets together and we hang out at a summit. Maybe teams get together monthly. Maybe it's bi-monthly, whatever works for that team. But I think it's just that, like, whatever works for that team, right? Like we shouldn't shun getting together, but like, do we really need to be together every couple days? Because I mean, if you really think about producing work, I mean, you can go meet with folks, get aligned, and then, meet up virtually, deliver value, and then meet up again in person. I mean, like, there's just no real reason to have to go into an office every day. I mean, I'd rather our team, our teams are spending time with their family. They're not commuting. I'd rather see them focused, for their workday rather than, maybe being unfocused at the office, but being at home. They can kind of frame their day as necessary. If they have a doctor's appointment, they should be able to go to that, right? Like, I think, we're all adults, right? We all want to get good work done. I mean, there's a really strong mission we talked about early on in this chat that we have in front of us. And, people need to have the freedom to go make the choices they make during the day to go execute against that mission and that vision. And like, I think being remote's the perfect vehicle to do it. Right. It's, I certainly personally have loved seeing my 3 children. I have relationships with them like I did not have before. I'm sure there are many fathers and mothers that are working remote right now that are cultivating those relationships with their kids. And I think that's beautiful. That's enlightening. It's inspiring. It's great for the kids, the future of our country. Right. I mean, it's like really cool. Like, so I think we have all the tech to do it. Look at us right now. I mean, we're having a conversation, right? Great. I mean, it's not as awesome as being in person always, but it's pretty nice, right? You walked into your room. I walked into my room. We're having a convo. After this, we hang up, go on to the next one. It's pretty cool. And eventually we'll meet in person, at some point. So
absolutely.
I don't know. I wrote an article for Rolling Stone recently that covers some of this. And so if anyone's interested in a deeper point of view of this, you can go check out that Rolling Stone article.
Yeah, I checked it out. That's what made me bring it up. It's awesome. I mean, so do you think this is kind of the business model of the future, especially for tech? Because, there's a lot of tech companies, some of the big ones are kind of, 50-50. Some of them are like, hey, we're just going to go remote from now on. And some of them are, like they're trying to ease people back in. But I mean, realistically, I'm personally, I think it's going to play a big, it's going to make a big change on how things are happening in the future.
It has to. I mean, look at the way technology is trending anyway. I mean, I was with my chief of staff last year remotely, and we were testing out some VR and AR solutions just because we're thinking through like outside the box. What could we do to make people feel like they're together during the pandemic? And it was amazing, the tech. You could literally, we had digital avatars of ourselves, and we could meet in person in this virtual studio and put Post-its up on the wall. And so you could see like, look, this is not viable for prime time. But you can see where this is going. And it's like, I think, look, there's always going to be people who want to be in an office. That's fine. There are going to be jobs and opportunities for those folks. But I think the majority is probably going to want to work remote. Again, it doesn't mean you're not seeing your coworkers once a month or, every couple months, once a quarter, whatever. But I just mean like the majority of people are going to spend the majority of their time working out of their home office, their apartment, right? Like this coffee shop. And it allows people to travel. It's great. Go work from your parents' house if you'd like to. Go visit with them if you haven't seen them in a year. Great. Go do that for 2 weeks. That's awesome.
Well, I mean, back to Flowhub. What's the plans for the future? What do you think is the next phase for Flowhub? What's going to go on?
Oh, that's a secret box, secret black box. No, look, I think the future, The evolution is going to be interesting in terms of just software providers in the space in general, right? I think you're going to start to see some consolidation in the market. You're going to see bigger and bigger financings, right? I mean, more and more money is going to pour into the ancillary side of the business, which frankly has been under nurtured by venture capital and investors for quite some time. I think like a lot of the early money went into the multi-state operators, the Canadian LPs. I think a lot of capital is going to shift into ancillary tech services, right? Like us. So I think you're going to see, bigger financings, consolidation, and then I think, you'll start to see some really interesting financial services get delivered into this vertical, right? I mean, to date, a lot of this has been cash. You see cashless ATM, but I think there's an evolution there of some really interesting products around financial services that will get delivered into the space, which is going to be huge for a lot of these SMBs who are working to compete in their communities against multi-state operators or bigger businesses. And so they're going to want, they're going to need capital for, redoing their store, buying inventory. It could be digital payments versus cash. So I think we're going to see a trend in that direction as well. So I'm really excited about it. I mean, I think this industry, the cool thing about cannabis is because of all these kind of like, I'm going to call them artificial problems, because they sort of are caused just by ourselves in the nature of kind of the war on drugs in general, our federal rules. We're having to leverage technology in interesting ways to produce really cool products that I think ultimately are going to make them, kind of make their way into maybe more of the mainstream over time. Just because the things we're doing in cannabis are just, they're unique. Because they're much more focused on we're much more focused on like solving some really technical problems in some really simple ways that I think could serve other industries. So anyway, that's I'm excited about the future of tech and cannabis. It's really exciting.
Awesome. So for the listeners out there who are dispensary owners or employees and they want to kind of see what they can do with Flowhub, what's the easiest way that they can get started?
Yeah, I mean, if you go to flowhub.com, you can watch a demo of the product. You can get hooked up with someone from our team to talk with about, what kind of problems they're facing as a dispensary and if we can help. We have a really great team. And so I would just recommend, if anyone's interested in learning more, go to flowhub.com. Click that book demo button. You can view a demo. And we even have a chat bot on there too. So if you want to, get a hold of someone from our team just by chatting with them through text, you can do the same thing on the website. But that would be my recommendation. Yeah, you can follow us on Instagram. We're Flowhub there. We're on Twitter, Flowhub Co. You can find us anywhere you get your social media.
Awesome. Well, Kyle, thanks for coming on. Thanks for your insights. It was great. I want to thank you for coming on to the show, and we're going to see a lot of great things from Flowhub, I'm sure.
Yeah. Hey, thank you so much, Jason, for having me today. It was a blast.
All right. Talk to you later. Once again, I want to thank Kyle Sherman with Flowhub for coming on to the show. And for all your cannabis news and for other podcasts like this one, visit us at www.trichomes.com. If you want to reach out to the show, email us at techandcannabis@trichomes.com. I'm Jason Kitamura. Thanks for joining us.